Good, you can hear me? Okay. We're going to continue from where we left off. We have questions left from last Monday's discussion. Correct? Okay. So Chaitanya Das is going to put the questions in the chat box, correct? Okay. There were like 5 or so questions, weren't there? Okay. I have to move over to a little more in the center here. Kamalochan asks, in India nowadays, ISKCON is branded as an Hindu organization by present political leaders and also by many devotees. Isn't this thought against Prabhupada's definition? Yeah. But sometimes if you are, say, if someone says, what are you? And say, we're Gaudiya Vaishnavas, and then they stare at you like confused. And then you say, well, it's a form of Hinduism. And they say, okay. So that's one reason that word may be used. For Indians, it may be kind of a national identity. And so, as I understood, traditionally, Indian religion never had the name Hindu, but because the Islamic religion had a name, the Hindus felt they needed, the Indian people felt they needed a name for their Vedic beliefs, Sanatana Dharma, whatever. And they adopted the word Hindu, which was a word used by Islamic people to describe Krishna's religion, Indian religion. And so that's another reason. So philosophically, yes. It's not like Hindu is a word in the Vedas or anybody could really accurately define it other than saying all the religions of India that aren't Jainism and Buddhism and whatever else might be, they're Christianity and Judaism. That's Hindu. If you follow the Vedas directly, you're Hindu, but yeah, so it's misused in that way. But sometimes it's used just for those reasons. Kind of like popular. Are you Hindus? Not really, but the Hindus believe in what we believe. That's confusing also, right? So I don't know if that addresses your concern, but from a purely philosophical point of view, yeah, Prabhupada didn't want us to identify with any religion per se, whether it be Hindu, Jewish, Christian, or whatever. Warpree says, this point is super interesting. We don't know what point it is, but maybe we'll remember. And complex, because there are some people in Western society who do not want to be associated with Hindu movements or certain religions. It causes them rejection. But they believe in God and want to know about God. So the way you approach them has to be particular. Yeah, okay. I know a devotee who was upset about, for lack of a better word, I would just say the Hinduization of ISKCON, that it's becoming influenced by Hindu way of thinking rather than Vaishnava way of thinking. But culturally, I think he was referring more to cultural influences. So He said, I didn't join ISKCON to become Indian or to become Hindu. I did an interview last week, and devotee, the lady interviewing me said, why did you become a Hare Krishna? And I said, why did you join the Hare Krishna movement? And I said, when I joined, there really wasn't a movement. There were just a few temples with a few people in it. So I didn't really think I was joining the Hare Krishna movement. I just thought I was moving into an ashram or a temple in the city I lived in. So if someone said you're joining a Hindu movement, maybe I wouldn't have joined. I think that's Gaurapriya's point, which is well taken. And as I said, Prabhupada didn't want us to identify with a particular religion because then that juxtaposes us against other religions. If I'm Hindu, how can I be Christian? If I'm Christian, how can I be Jewish? If I'm Jewish, how can I be Islamic? And Prabhupada thought that those identifications were just extensions of bodily identification. I mean, specifically, you can see that now in the conflict between the Jews and Palestinians. The conflict is a religious one, an ethnic one, in addition to other factors, for sure. It would be, it's not a civil war, let's just say that. Right? So, yeah. We're not Hindu, we're not Christian, and we're not Jew. We're none of these things. Our Prabhupada would say that. He definitely, and someone would say, can I practice Krishna consciousness if I'm Hindu? Prabhupada would say, yeah, why not? You can. There's no problem. You don't have to change your religion. So he would often say, you can change your religion, but you can't change your eternal position as soul and servant of Krishna. That's not going to change no matter what religion you join to. Oh, now I joined this religion. I'm no longer spirit soul, part and parcel of Krishna, servant of Krishna. What a relief to know that. I can just do whatever I want now. You'll always be part and parcel of God and a servant of God. You can't remove that from your identity if you change your religion. And so Prabhupada would also say that religion is, he would see it as faith more than anything else. But real religion is your soul, your servant. That's the essence. But as it's become popular, it's more of a faith. I believe in this, and you don't believe in it, therefore I'm going to heaven and you're going to hell. Okay, that's interesting. Could do a whole PhD in that. Why people have to think other people are going to hell to make them feel secure in their own religion. That's interesting. Don't you think that's interesting? Have you ever thought like that? Like, why are these people why are they so like emphatic about everyone's going to hell and Jesus is the only way? It seems they're very insecure in their faith and they have to believe that to secure their own stability in their religion. Have you ever thought like that? Like they say, this is the only way, everyone's going to hell. And then you think, like you actually believe that God would create that situation? And I think it's a real, for them, it's like a test of their faith. This is what they've been told the scriptures teach. Of course, I think if you go to any religion that doesn't have a disciplic succession, and you start to look under all the rocks and how things happen, you start to see it's not exactly the way it's being presented to you. It's not straightforward at all. And the reason certain things are accepted as truth often have political ideologies under them. And branding is very important in religion. Have you noticed that? Like how you brand your religion becomes how you brand your philosophy. Branding is a way to get market share. So if you think everyone's going to hell, you need to save them, you want to create a brand that says you're all going to hell. And this is the only way, because that branding is like, that's good branding, don't you think? Like if I say, Hari Bhakti, you know, you're living in a suburb of Delhi. Do you know, in 10 years, you're going to be dead because that air is so polluted. And I scare you and get you to believe that. And I've got the medicine that's going to give you the antibodies to protect you from that polluted air. Wow. Now you'll be a good customer. And if you don't take this pill every day, you definitely in 10 years, you'll die of lung cancer. I can convince you of that. And I can convince everyone in Delhi of that. I got a good business, right? So now, if I can convince you you're going to hell, this is your only one chance. This is the only religion. This is the only way to believe it. And you don't even have to do anything except Jesus. Wow. Now that you could start a good business with that, don't you think? You could get a lot of people to buy into that. As opposed to, you have to chant 16 rounds and follow 4 principles you have to do. What do you call that? What Islamic religion, when they do their call to prayer? There's a name for that. You do it 5 times a day, and then you have to do Ramadan and fast all day. You have to do all this stuff. We got market share. You don't have to do any of that. And all you have to do is say, Jesus, I accept you. And you're good to go, and you don't have to go to hell. And just try to do your best. But if you don't do well, that's okay. I was listening to this class to read Ananda Maharaj. I can't find it. It was so interesting. It was something he taught when he was speaking as a professor, when he was teaching religion. He said, I think I might have mentioned this to you last week. He said, Buddhism was a revolt against Hinduism, because Hinduism was caste conscious, and that caste consciousness was misapplied, as you can imagine, in Kali Yuga, misapplied by the Brahmins, because the people, who's going to misapply it the most? The people who have the most power, right? Isn't that the way it works? And then you overthrow there's a reformation, you overthrow the political party who's exploiting, and then you get to exploit. Isn't that kind of how it works, historically speaking? Often, at least. So the Buddhist was a revolt against this caste discrimination. And they wanted, of course, Buddha came and said, forget the Vedas. And so people liked it because we don't have to follow caste. But then you had, on the other side, you had Hinduism saying, when you die, you go to paradise. And the Buddhists are saying, when you die, you go nowhere. There's nothing, nirvana, there's nothingness. Ananda Maharaj made a really interesting point. He said, can you describe nothing? How do you describe nothing? Because it's nothing, you can't describe it, right? He was talking about in relation to the Big Bang Theory that everything came from nothing. Oh, please describe nothing. Nothing by definition is nondescript because nothing doesn't exist. So I thought that was interesting. Next time you see an atheist who says everything comes from nothing, you can tell them, but nothing doesn't exist. That's what the word means. You can do better, you have to do better than everything came from nothing. They'll give you some scientific that came from a singular something it came from a nothing with an infinite mass. What do they say? Finite or infinite mass and a potential. That's something stupid. Like, I don't want to offend scientists because I'm scientifically brainless, but if I could defeat a scientist, that means they really don't have much going for them, because I don't have much going for me scientifically. But they say something like it's a finite point with infinite mass, something like that. That was where the explosion came from. It's like, really? How do you explain that? Finite means you can't even locate it, but it's got infinite mass and energy or whatever. Anyway, so what Ananda Maharaj was saying is that you have this religion that is there in India along with Buddhism. They're losing market share because people are saying, when grandpa dies, where did he go? And he said, he went nowhere. Really? You want to be part of a religion where after you die, you go nowhere? He said, you know, if you die in Hinduism, if you die in Christianity, you go to heaven or better, liberation, right? Go to a higher planet, go to the spiritual world. So he said that there were adaptations because they were losing market share, to use a business term. They were losing market share. There were no, Hinduism has like how many gods to worship? Every street corner, there's a different god with a different name. Indians love to worship, but now in Hinduism, there's nobody to worship because there's no God. Losing market share. So he went on to explain other things that they taught that would help give them market share. So oftentimes religions come down as branding a new philosophy to get market share because they're losing, because they think everyone's going to hell but the people who follow their religion. So that's interesting, isn't it? You can do a PhD on that one. That would be such an interesting PhD, the corruption of religion. Actually, like go back far enough to find out what the original founders actually taught, and then navigate through all the changes. Well, in 28 AD, this concept was presented, which did not exist. Well, it wouldn't be 27 AD. It would be at least 100 years before anyone, right? Wasn't it? Anyway, I'm not a historian, but delineate, that's what historians do. And you delineate, well, this idea did not exist for the first 100 years. And all of a sudden, Paul said, Jesus is God. Well, nobody ever said that before. So you're delineating the deviations. And then when it got to Constantine, and Constantine said, like, we're going to make this a world religion, political move. And that was a whole other ball game. And, who decided what goes in the Bible and what doesn't? That's a whole other thing. It would be quite interesting. If you're into PhDs, that would be an interesting one, just tracking down tradition and refining what the founder taught and how it deviated, when and why and where and by who and what the deviation was. Be quite interesting. So that's why Prabhupada wasn't into religion. Because he said, well, this is just what you believe, and this is what you've been handed. But your spirit soul, your eternal servant of Krishna, God, you can't take that away. We have a lot of comments, questions. Okay. About crazy things happening in ISKCON. Can it not just be bad for my spiritual life to even see the faults? Yeah. Well, yeah, it depends what fault you're seeing. Well, let's go back a little bit. Bad things happening in ISKCON. Some bad things have happened in ISKCON. Some bad things are happening, and some bad things will be happening. But just because you think it's bad, objectively speaking, doesn't mean it actually is. So that's another topic. Right? You may think it's bad, but it's not. So, okay. Have you noticed that human beings have like problems? The main problem is that they're human. Have you noticed that? Like if we weren't human, like ISKCON would be much better, don't you think? If we were all avatars, I don't think there'd be any problems in ISKCON, do you? If we were all avatars and someone saw problems in ISKCON, then that means they have problems. But the problem is we're human beings, conditioned souls, trying to become Krishna conscious. Now, my dear ladies and gentlemen, what has happened many times in the history of the universe, and it happened in ISKCON, is you take a very nice person and you put them in a position which gives them power, control, resources, and they just can't handle it. And, take those away from them, they're fine. They're really nice people. We had one devotee, And we said, everyone loves you. You should be the temple president. And he said, yeah, and when I become the temple president, everyone's going to hate me. Have you seen that before? Like, anyway, that's a whole other topic for another PhD. Why everyone hates leaders. You know, we got like, I've given you like 20 PhD topics. So, you know, 5 years each PhD, you need to live another 100 years. And hopefully more than 3 people will read your PhD after 5 years of work. Hare Krishna. So, Henrik, it's like going in the hospital and saying, people in this, God, what's wrong with this hospital? Everybody in the hospital is sick. Could you imagine? We should do a video like that, right? You walk in the hospital and you're just complaining to all the doctors, everyone who works there. What's wrong with you guys? Everybody's sick. And they go, that's what, if they weren't sick, they wouldn't be in here. They wouldn't need to be in here. Hello. So if we were avatars, we wouldn't have to join ISKCON. If we were, you know, we would just be like starting our own movements. You know, we would have already started, you know, 100 ISKCONs, right? So that's the problem. The problem with ISKCON is we're human, and humans in certain situations and circumstances don't do well, whereas in other situations and circumstances, they're fine. And so sometimes someone's in a situation where they become tempted. Now think about this. Our philosophy teaches that Krishna is the controller and enjoyer. You've probably heard that before, right? And you thought, oh no, I wanted to be the enjoyer and controller. You mean he is? I can't be. I don't know if I like this philosophy. You ever thought like that? You're not going to admit it, but let's just assume for the sake of discussion that because we have a material body, we have thought like that. So now let's look at this. You might say, I don't like to control, you know, well, you have a phone, right? You like your phone? It's like, you got a lot of control on your phone, don't you? You can talk to anybody anywhere in the world, like snap of your fingers. That's a lot of control. If I took your phone away from you, a lot of you would be like withdrawal symptoms, right? Nervous and can't sleep. And, you know, I need to touch I just need to look at my phone. Isn't it a fact? Right? You've seen that YouTube video. The mother locks the kids' phones up, and then the kids break in the safe to get their phones because they're having withdrawal. That's a sign of control. We don't realize how much we like to control. So you have software, you know, which gives you like 4,000 options to do things. I have software like that. I have music software. If you have music or video software or graphic software, Photoshop software, I'm sure there's all kinds of software. There's way more complicated than that. You have control. You have so much control. Now, I have to give a music example because my friend who's a musician told me this. I don't know if you ever seen a console mixer. You ever seen that like at a live concert or a kirtan mela, this console, and it's got all these buttons, and sometimes things aren't working, and I'll go up and look at all the buttons because I kind of know what they do. Yeah, actually, I'm not kind of, I know what they do. Unless it's a German console, then they do things differently. But so this friend of mine said, you know, he said, I just like to turn buttons because, you know, like I have lots of buttons. So it's control. It's like we like to control things, right? I mean, imagine you fly an airplane, look at all the buttons you have, you know? So I'm just trying to, you know, make us realize that we like to control things. Look at your kitchen, everything's in order. It's a good thing. It's Satwik, but you know, you like to control it, right? This goes there and then your kids put it there. No, that doesn't go there. Put it here, you know, it's right. It's in this spot right here where that red dot is. That's where all the cups go. Don't put it where the green dot is. That's for the plates. You ever like that? Obsessive. My wife said that after women have kids, They become obsessive about their house. It's a control issue. It just satisfies their need to control. I don't know. My wife's always cleaning. I go, you're cleaning something that's already clean. Yeah, just give me a feeling of control. So I was thinking about, if you start thinking about control and like all the buttons and things you like to control, it's like, oh yeah, I really do like to control, right? When you buy a car, buy the car that has the most controls, the more the better, the more buttons, the better, right? The seat go up, back, left, right, warm, cold, soft, hard. Well, more buttons, more control, right? You pay more money for more control, isn't it? Anyway, yeah. So what do we do? What do we do? We try to control for Krishna. So we try to utilize all those things for Krishna. Otherwise, we're competing with him, right? But my point is, when you think about how deeply rooted the desire is to control, what to speak for control your husband or wife, wow, you like to do that? Have you tried to do that? And your husband says, stop trying to control me. Your kids say, stop trying to control me. You're like, okay. And what do? The next minute you try to control them, right? It's just so deeply ingrained. And then you have to go to a psychologist and say, I have control issues. And you go through therapy for 48 years and you still have trouble because the conditioning is so deep. So is it no wonder that you get some innocent person who's like intelligent and capable, and we think, oh, he or she should be in charge of this, and you put them in charge of $5 million and 5,000 people, and anyone will do whatever they say. Is it a surprise that they may have trouble? Of course not. So that's the problem. Now, when you see somebody misusing their power or their position, in most cases, it was not their intention. In some cases, it may have been that they like consciously or subconsciously rose to a position of control because that's what they want to do. And again, controlling is not bad. If you can control in sattva gun as a nice, humble, compassionate person, that's good, because we need managers, and managers means control money, control resources, keep things organized. So that's great. But you understand the problem. I hope you understand, right? Now, occasionally you do get people who have their sights set on name and fame, and that doesn't really work well in a spiritual organization, and it creates all kinds of hell for everybody. But I think the good thing about ISKCON is it's pure enough that it spits out those who are trying to exploit it, that they can't, they can't stay because it's so much against our principles that there will be enough people that will ensure that they don't stay in that position, because it's not proper. So they can create damage in that position, but no one's ever stayed in that position in ISKCON. They either leave on their own or they're asked to leave because it's improper. So, but your point is well taken. If you dwell on faults, like I say, if you're going to dwell on them, do something. Otherwise, why dwell on it? If you can't do something productive, then it's just going to eat you up, pretty much, right? I'm dwelling on this fault because I want to figure out what to do about it. I'm dwelling on this fault because I like dwelling on faults. Well, you know the analogy of watering the weeds? Do you know that analogy? Bhaktisiddhanta said, if you don't pull the weeds, then when you chant, the water is going to fall in the weeds. So focusing on someone's faults without a utilitarian purpose is watering the weed. Raise your hand if you think it's fun to focus on people's faults, like you have a good time when you do. Okay, no one's going to raise their hand because they're too embarrassed. But why else would we do it? Like, in case you didn't notice, human beings do things because they like to do them. Have you noticed that? And you know why human beings don't do things? Take a wild guess. Why don't they do it? You're right, because they don't want to. So if you are finding fault, you're doing it because you think it's fun. It's enjoyable. Otherwise, why would you do it? What are you trying to achieve by finding a fault that has no utility? You're just finding it, and you're not going to do anything about it other than complain. So you might be venting, your frustrations and so forth. I understand. That could be there. But in the pure sense of criticism, it's just fun. You put everybody down, you feel great for a while. It's like a drug, don't you think? It's the drug. What drug are you taking today? It's called criticism. I'm feeling really high. I'm like taking 3 pills already. I've criticized 3 devotees, and it's not even 4:30 in the morning yet. I'm feeling energized. Yeah, that's what it's like. Anyway, think about that. Next time you criticize, it's like, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? Like, what is going on? There's this whole internal process that many of us are disconnected from. We don't even know why we do things, isn't it? It's not a good place to be. You really want to understand why, you be in touch with why you're doing things, admit it, and correct it when it needs to be corrected. In this course coming up this weekend, oh my Govinda, there's some really heavy things in it. I don't know if you want to come to the course. It might be too heavy for it. Maybe you shouldn't come. You might end up crying and screaming and kicking and thinking, I should have never come to this course. It's too heavy. But part of the course shows us why we choose the wrong people. Like what's going on in our mind, why we choose somebody. And one of the things says, I'm sure Gaurapriya knows this well, if you grew up in a chaotic life, you'll choose a person who's chaotic. And if you choose a person who's not, you'll get bored. Isn't that interesting? Like your life is chaotic, everything's crazy, everything's always going wrong. And you meet someone who's like totally together, totally grounded, organized, regulated, everything happens the way he or she plans it, and you think, this is boring. And you meet another person, total chaos, up and down, addicted, now is in therapy, and you don't know from day to day what's happening. This is my man. I'm used to this. I grew up this way. That's pretty heavy, isn't it? Well, that's just one heavy thing that you're going to learn. But my point is, a lot of us in that situation don't even know why we're in that situation, why we're choosing that way, because we're not connected with why we do things. So my point was, if you're critical, it's good to know why. It's good to be, catch yourself and say, oh, this is why I'm doing that. Because it's easy to stop, or easier to stop when you understand why. Yes? Know yourself, know your motive, know what's going on. Why am I choosing this? Why am I not choosing that? Why am I doing this? Why am I doing that, not doing that? As much as you can understand. Why did I give up this relationship? It was good. There's a reason you give up good relationships. You want to know why? Does anybody know why? Why would you do that? Because you're afraid the person will leave you. So you just leave them first. That's one reason. Not a good reason, but a reason. Or you have trust issues and you think they're probably going to leave. And I'm getting attached, so I'm going to break them. See, we want to understand why we do what we do. Okay, enough of the psychology. Let's go to the next question. On the topic of women being less intelligent, he meant we women needed protection, correct? Yeah. That's how I understood it and how it was explained to me. Yeah. You need protection when you're choosing a husband. You need a lot of protection when you're choosing a husband. And you'll realize that. Well, the men need it also. You'll realize that this weekend, how much protection we need. Ladies, I don't know, you know this, but you could never know this unless you're in a male body. I think it was Narada Muni Wasn't Narada Muni or Lord Shiva wanted to experience what it's like to be a king, and then they were allowed to enter the king's body? Does anyone know that story? Who was that? Was it Narada Muni or Lord Shiva? Narada Muni. You know, I was trying to understand the mentality of a king or a materialist. And so Krishna let him go in the body and he could understand it. So there's some things that I think men will never understand about women, women will never understand about men. But ladies, I have some bad news for you. The more if I were a lady, I would make myself ugly, because the more beautiful you are, the more men think about you know what when they see you. And that's all they think about. Now, a woman's thinking, how could someone only be thinking about sex? You'd have to be a man to answer that question as a woman. Maybe you could understand as a woman a little bit, but it's like, and how could you be thinking about sex without wanting a relationship with this person? That's, I think for women, that's really difficult. But for men, it's like, what's the problem? Yeah, it's just enjoyment. And, you know, the male body, that's what it does. It's really good at, right? So you've got all these men running around who are sexually agitated 25 hours a day, 8 days a week. And yeah, you need protection, because you may not always be able to understand. This one man said, you can take it or leave it. This one man said, he said, you can't have a truly platonic, a man can't have a truly platonic relationship with a woman, because at some point he'll always think about sex with that woman. That's bad news, ladies, isn't it? That there's a species out there that, like, yeah. So if I were you, I would go have plastic surgery to look like a monster, so that no men will bother you anymore. And when you get old and ugly, you can celebrate. You go, oh, finally, men will stop looking at me. Oh, there'll be some lusty guy. I'll still look at you. Don't worry. But most of them will stop. That's part of the glories of getting older. But this is a reality. And this is one of the big reasons that we say women need protection, because sometimes they can't tell that a man is trying to exploit them, rather than, I mean, he says that he loves them, but we guys know what that means when a guy says, I love you. I always tell my female disciples who are not married, I say, when a man says he loves you, challenge it, doubt it, test it, because that's what men say. Any woman that they're attracted to, they say that. I won't ask Hari Bhakti to confirm all this, but if I did ask him, he would say yes. Sadly, right? Hare Krishna. So no more bad news for the women, but yes, women need protection from lusty men and car mechanics. Did I ever tell you that story of the car mechanic who was going to work on our car for $700? And then I thought, well, let's go to another place, because it was just a gas station. And we could drive down the street, went to another gas station. He said, oh, you just need to replace a spark plug. And he replaced it. And he goes, that's $2. So, you know, women are not famous for knowing about cars. So I always tell women, before you go to the car mechanic, look up in a dictionary 5 or 10 things about cars, and mention that when you go there, and then they won't try to cheat you, because they'll realize you know something about cars. Now, if you don't believe me, this is statistically documented, at least in how much you would pay for a new car. It depends on your gender and your race. Did you know that? The price you get? Did you know that? Yeah. Yeah. And so if you're black or a woman, you get a higher price than a white male. Did you know that? At least in America. So that's my joke. We protect from car salesmen and car mechanics, but it's really protection from men who are men who are men, who are men without religious upbringing. Yeah. You know, my wife just pointed something out yesterday. I don't know what we were talking about. It was the discussion. Yeah. It was the discussion about celibacy before marriage. She said, you know, so many of the Christians, young boys and girls, they're celibate before marriage. I said, I know. It's for many of these Christian groups, it's an extremely, it's talked about a lot, it's emphasized, it's put on a pedestal. It's something that is very important to them, to save themselves, be virgins until you get married. Apparently emphasize, maybe we emphasize celibacy, but maybe in a way that is not being well communicated. But somehow or other, those Christian groups have communicated in a way that this is what God wants you to do. Of course, it's a little different because after they get married, they put no restriction on it. In fact, I think it's almost the opposite, that this is what God wants you to do. And now, I don't know if you noticed, but a lot of Western couples are not having kids. Not that they're not having sex, they're not having kids. Have you noticed that? It's kind of a trend. Who's having all the kids? The religions that encourage it, like Hasidic Jews, Islamic religion. I think Hindus just have a lot of kids by nature, but that's also changing, cost of living, so forth. You've got two parents working, it's hard to take care of kids. So the Islamic people are the ones having all the kids. Do the math. Give it enough time, the world's going to be populated. We'll have to convert all the Islams to devotees because that'll be the major religion, it seems. The Muslim people, Islamic people. Anyway, it's interesting. Something for us to think about. Celibacy before marriage. How is it the Christians were able to communicate it so well? They have an organization called Promise Keepers. You know about that? Young people who promise to be celibate before marriage. It's a whole movement, right? You know about that, Sydney? Promise Keepers. Yeah. Sydney might know how they do it. They seem to be doing better in many ways than us. Anything that you emphasize strongly, I guess for us, it's like, yeah, I'm going to be celibate before I get married, and then I'm going to have sex once a month till my wife gets pregnant. So basically, I'm going to be celibate all my life, and it's not working for me. I think that's the difference. Yeah, I'll be celibate till I get married, because then when I'm married, I don't have to be celibate. I'll fast, because we're going to feast. Yeah, no, you're going to fast, and at midnight, you're going to get one chapati. And that's it. Oh, that's harder to fast, right? Anyway, these are more social issues, but we can talk about that another time. Krishna Premi says, I personally still struggle to accept certain statements in my heart which are controversial. For example, today I read that Prabhupada said 3:20:26 of Bhagavatam, how homosexual male desire is demoniac. And it triggers me to read it because we have many male gay devotees and often they are discriminated against. Or when we speak about anti-abortion, but if a woman becomes a victim of rape, how cruel is it to force her to be stuck in her trauma for the rest of her life, carrying a child of rape, but it is also cruel to kill that child. These are exceptions, but it seems like nowadays these exceptions are going bigger in number. Yeah. Oh, that's just the tip of the iceberg, Krishna Premi. There's so many things like that. But I have to say this about that. One of the challenges we have is we are not growing up in a traditional culture. We're growing up in a very liberal culture. So what is normal to us is not traditionally considered normal, but it's normal for us because that's how we grow up and that's how everything is. So that's part of where we have the problem. Now, Krishna Premi's point is that being a homosexual is not a choice, it's the way they were born. Okay. Not always, but let's just say that generally it's like that. With some people, I think it's obvious. They've got a feminine mind in a male body, or a male mind in a feminine body. Traditionally, marriage was between a man and a woman. That's the religious perspective. So if we really will study what way Prabhupada is preaching, he preaches general principles to the public, like this is generally how things should go. And then behind the curtains, behind the scenes, as with every guru, they start dealing with the exceptions. And a lot of those exceptions, they may adjudicate or make decisions in a way that publicly they could not speak. So Prabhupada is trying to withhold or uphold a tradition that believes a certain way. So publicly he has to uphold that tradition, and privately he might make some adjustments. Although I'm only aware of privately where if a man needs to live with a man, when push comes to shove, if that's what they need, Prabhupada wouldn't stop it, because we have a story of him telling one of his servants to do it because his servant couldn't live without, he was having difficulty being single. So then Prabhupada just gave in and said, okay. But Prabhupada did speak against officially marrying, recognizing that he was against that. So what can we say? He was against it, as are all or most conservative religious people. They're against it. They're not against gay people. They're just against gay people being officially married. So Prabhupada criticized that, which is why anyone who would recommend that will be criticized. And that's just, it's kind of like, I think we just have to accept, no matter where society goes, that's just something that Prabhupada said, that we should have nothing to do with marrying gay people. But it's not that we're against gay people. Or if they want to get married, that's their choice. It's just that we wouldn't do it. We wouldn't endorse it as a principle. That's Prabhupada's point of view. And so what can we do? What can we say? We can't go against that. That's what he said. So if someone says, I'm gay, I want to be a devotee, fine. I want to live with my partner, fine. Most temples, no one's going to have a problem with that. And if you want to get married and do that, most temples, at least in America, probably Latin America also, I don't know other places, no one's going to have a problem with that. I think very few places they'll have a problem with it, but they won't tell you to do it. That's where the problem comes. Yeah, you should do it. That's a good idea. We would just say, do what you think is best for your spiritual life, but we can't endorse, we're not going to endorse it. I think part of now we don't know. Here's another thing which complicates it, and like Prabhupada's not here, so we can't discuss it. When Prabhupada spoke about homosexual, we don't know what he was thinking, but I am pretty sure he's thinking sex between two men. That's like, well, why do you want to live with another man so you can have sex? So even if we said, Prabhupada, I want to get married so I can have sex, he would say, well, I'm not going to marry you for that reason. So you know what I'm saying? But the problem is, Prabhupada didn't say that. He said homosexual relationship is demoniac, or that we could understand and saying, yeah, because any relationship which is based on sex is demoniac, for sure. I'm assuming Prabhupada was saying men want to be together. Why? So they can have sex. So we're not going to support that. This is demoniac. Illicit sex. And you know, it's you're not even having sex to have children, you're just having sex. So now that's what I think. It doesn't mean everybody thinks that, or everybody may think that, but still Prabhupada said it's demoniac for that reason. So now you have two members of the same sex want to get married to help one another be devotees, and they're not really into sex. Maybe they're celibate. It's a little different, isn't it? Well, it's a lot different, I think, than what Prabhupada was thinking. But still, the idea of marriage, I think it has no place within the Vedic system. So Prabhupada couldn't say, yeah, well, if they live together, but they're celibate. He never said that. So, you know, like, what can you say now? Because if you say that, then you can't get support from anything Prabhupada said, other than you can say, well, if this is what two people want to do, certainly let them do that. And they can be good devotees. And if they're good devotees, everyone in the temple will appreciate it, just like you appreciate a grihasta who are good devotees, and just like you don't appreciate a grihasta who are just married to have sex, and they're not good devotees. It's the same thing. Now, having said all that, I will make a prediction. You can write this down if you like. As society changes over time, I think this will become a non-issue, because every country, state, city in the universe will have legalized gay marriages and will be accepted as totally normal. And at some point in time, every Hare Krishna devotee will accept it as normal, even though Prabhupada said it isn't, and people won't even like pay attention to. He said it isn't because it is so normal, and probably at that point it's like whatever. That's my prediction. Does that make sense to you? You know, it's Kali Yuga. It's bound. It's going in that way already. It's becoming normalized, right? But I'm not saying that's good. I'm just saying that's probably what's going to happen. At some point, it won't be such a contentious issue because it won't be abnormal for anybody. It's just like that's the way everybody grew up. You know how many gay marriages there were when I grew up? Yes. If there were any, it was done illegally. So that's how I grew up. So for me, it's like, it's not a common thing. I know many gay people, many gay devotees, and there's like, they're just devotees, what's the problem? You know what the problem is? What the problem was for Prabhupada? If you're trying to promote it as like, no, this is really good and we should do this. No, okay. For Prabhupada, it's like, well, if you have to do it, do it. But just, that's your private life. Don't try to make it a central theme within ISKCON, although the central theme would be discrimination against gay devotees. That definitely is a problem. So we don't want that, and we could fight against that. But culturally speaking, there are some parts of the world where if devotees are gay, they'll be discriminated against because it's not part of the culture, because it's considered a disease, or it's considered a huge abnormality. It's not culturally accepted yet. Give it time, it will be. In that same country that appalls homosexuality, at some point in the future it won't. It'll be normalized, and then those who are homosexual won't have a problem. There probably won't even be a need to have gay right parades and websites and all that. It'll just be a normal way of life, right? I mean, 100 years ago, women couldn't vote in America. So, it's like, is it a problem that women are voting? Do people like demonstrate? Women are voting. Stop it. Maybe in a few countries in the world, not in America. But, obviously, in 1920s, they were protesting for it, and some were protesting against it. Right? So another PhD, the how a religion evolves in the context of its culture. Look at the way the Catholics dress. Like, where did that come from? Was that how Jesus dressed? In uniforms like that? What verses the outfit described it? It's not. Where did it come from? It was actually, obviously, if you do your PhD, you'll see, they're some pagan religion and they dress this way, and people want to celebrate, and you need uniforms and positions. If you have a position, you have a uniform, and it just, there's no verse that this is how you dress if you're a Catholic priest, right? Wow, we got like 4 PhD topics in this. My daughter's doing a thesis. I'm trying to give her all these topics. She goes, nah, that's boring. That's boring. So she's picking another boring topic. I thought mine are more interesting than hers. And I have to be interested in it because I have to read all the papers and edit them. So anyway, I'm going to be a mental health professional in a couple of years after I edit all her papers, because that's what she's studying. Anything you want to know about mental health, I'll have all the statistics for you. That's the best I can say. The issue of a woman being raped. There's also, I think what's important for us, what we forget, the laws of karma don't change when the social values in society change. And that's where you kind of get confused, because society's going in this way and say, okay, we understand. We have to be sensitive to society. We have to be sensitive to individual people so we don't discourage them. We have to be sensitive to the fact this woman was raped. She doesn't want to have a child, and so on. But at the same time, please always remember the laws of karma don't always take into consideration the context that we take into consideration. And so maybe it's better for that woman, but maybe it's not, because then there's this karmic consequence that she'll face. And even just psychological consequences of killing a child, even though there's maybe rationale for it. Anyway, so that's when you're discussing these issues and social issues, you have to take in the laws of karma as well, because you can say, well, we can break this law because of this. Yeah, but if you break it, you still suffer, right? So, that's the beauty of having scripture. It gives you some, you don't have to just speculate. Well, the way I feel about this, yeah. And then, the way you'll feel about it in 30 years is probably going to be different than the way you feel about it now also. And the way people feel about it in 150 years, it's going to be way different than the way you feel about it. And you call yourself a liberal, well, in 150 years, your views are conservative. You know how that goes, right? Isn't it? Like if you look at politics, you say like a lot of what's considered Republican or conservative, 50 years ago that's the way liberals thought. A lot of it. You know what I'm saying? It's like, it's all relative, So I hope that answers that question. That's the best I could do without getting into minute detail of having to make a decision about this, which I've never had to make yet. But the general decision from the spiritual perspective is have the child and let it be adopted rather than kill it. And, one of the things that Prabhupada said is to just ask yourself, how would you like to be treated? So if you're that child in the womb that was impregnated because your mother was raped, would you like to be killed, or would you like to live? Probably you want to live. I mean, we can assume that. So if the child wants to live, then, and there's a karmic consequence if she doesn't. Anyway, it's like, it's Kali Yuga. They're not easy answers. Like there's so many things wrong. It's like, why did this have to happen? Well, why did she have to go down this street at midnight? If she didn't, it wouldn't have happened. Well, she got lost. Or her car broke down. There's like a million factors. But if it wasn't Kali Yuga, life would be better. Hare Krishna. Okay. At least this discussion is keeping you awake, right? I hope. as you notice, a lot of times when we talk about sensitive issues, I don't like to come to too many conclusions because I just want to kind of show kind of the parameters of where the discussion can go. There are probably more parameters I haven't thought of, but I like to present parameters, and then you can kind of understand that, you know, someday you may have to deal with this, and you don't just want to react because of what are the norms of society or how you feel emotionally about it. You have to, understand what scripture is saying and the context of it and the parameters of it. And, why did Prabhupada say that? Why does the scripture say that? Is it actually really bad? In what ways, if it is bad, in what ways is it bad? These are, this is how Brahmins have to think. This is the way we have to think. We need to be very open and compassionate and liberal. At the same time, we can't act against the injunctions of our spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada. So you're balancing. It's a balancing act. And as you know, you can take 5 of the most learned devotees in ISKCON and you'll get 5 different opinions on the same thing. And they're all right. Just to add to your confusion, if you're not already confused. But it's a reality. This is just the reality of the way we live. And then ultimately, we want to help people become devotees, and we want to encourage people to be Krishna conscious. At the same time, we want to maintain our principles. So we want to accomplish all these things, right? And as you remember, that devotee who came as a brahmachari to the temple and then came in a sari the next day, and then the brahmachari the next day, as you know that story, Prabhupada was pretty liberal with him. It didn't matter. You want to be a man or woman, it doesn't matter. Just be a devotee. That was Prabhupada's concern. And he wasn't creating any disruption. Gaurapriya says, there is an international organization called Our Daughters International that rescues underage girls who are victims of sex trafficking on the border of Nepal. They give them material and spiritual care. It inspires me a lot that maybe we can have something like this at ISKCON in the future. Yeah. So this is the resolution. This is the resolution, Gaurapriya. You take your nature for social welfare and engage it in a way that you can make them devotees. Otherwise, you help them and then they come back in the next life and they have to deal with the same thing. So if you can combine both, that's my answer to your email. If you can combine both, then you can utilize both. This is a whole other topic for discussion, social welfare and the Hare Krishna movement. That's another PhD topic. Why don't you do it, Gaurapriya? Here's Prabhupada's point. Prabhupada would sometimes, people would say, your devotees are just chanting and dancing. They're not becoming doctors and lawyers. And Prabhupada would say, we don't need more doctors and lawyers. There's more than enough. But we need Brahmins. We need intellectuals who can enlighten people. And I don't know if Prabhupada gave this example or it's my example, but if I went to the president of a university and I said, how come you're not feeding the poor? How come you're not housing the poor? How come you're not opening a hospital? He would obviously say that wasn't the purpose of this. We're an educational organization and we're sympathetic to those causes. This is not our function, our purpose. So that was often, the way Prabhupada would put things in perspective. It's not like we're against these things, but it's not the function. But in some cases, he said, well, the real problem, you could solve this problem, but it's not the real problem. The real problem is something else. We want to get to the root of the problem. Of course, you might say, we'll never get to the root of the problem. We're too small. That may be. So I think the amalgamation of do both is the best. We'll rescue these girls and we'll make them devotees. We'll feed the poor people and we'll bring the holy name to them. something like that. Otherwise, they just get food. I get prasadam is good, but we want to do more. So that was at least that was the example Prabhupada set for us. You know, here's the problem you have with that. You say, well, devotee by nature is compassionate and he doesn't like to see people suffering. And then you can say, well, if they're suffering that much, they can't hear about Krishna. We have to alleviate their suffering. And that's true. So if we went to preach in a very poor country and nobody would come to listen because they're hungry, we would obviously think first thing is we have to feed people because they can't. We want to help them spiritually, but we can't because they're hungry or they don't have proper social conditions, so they can't hear. Now, the opposite is sometimes true. Because of poor social conditions, they're the most open. So you go in a poor village and everyone will come out and take prasadam and chant and dance with us because they're humble. I don't know if you saw Indra Maharaj is going to these little townships in South Africa. He puts out videos. And there's all these people and all these kids go with him on Harinam because poor people are like that. Yeah. Then you help them materially and they don't want to chant Hare Krishna. I mean, it's just crazy. You just really don't know, right? I knew this guy in jail. I corresponded with him, and then he was doing really well in jail, and he got out of jail, and it was like it was over. His Krishna consciousness was over. Better you stay in jail. I'm going to go to court, get you back in jail. That's my service. So sometimes it's like that. Sydney says, since I came from Christianity, I often thought of how to help others, religious paths, have true understanding of Krishna without causing more harm. Being in East Texas, this seems like something to focus on. You mean religion's causing harm in the name of salvation, exploitation? Yeah. Yeah, prosperity gospel. You all know about the prosperity gospel? Okay, I'm your preacher now, and I'm going to tell you that for my seva, I want a $60 million jet, and I want you all to pay for it. And if you pay for it, God's going to bless you. And if you pay for it, my preaching will increase. And why should we limit God to 60 million? He can do whatever he wants. God wants to give me a $60 million jet. Why should I limit God? If you sow the seed of a donation, it'll come back. That's the prosperity gospel, right? And there's so many news reports on them, and and they live in mansions. Like, mansions are not big houses. It's not just like a big car. A mansion's like a truck, like a train. They're huge. They're like 25 rooms, on several acres, swimming pool, tennis court, like that. You're a preacher, like, well, why do you need all that? Jesus didn't have that. No, that's what God wants. He loves me. That's the prosperity gospel. Yeah. And if you don't give it, I'm going to make you feel like I'm going to shame you if you don't. You know why you didn't give that donation? Because you don't have faith. That's why. And God's not going to bless you because you need to sow a seed. That seed is donation. This one guy did an experiment. He sent money to one of these guys. You know what this guy, he sent him, what did he send him? Like $29 or something. And the preacher sent back a mail with $1 in it. And he said, send this $1 back with another $79 and you'll be blessed. He sent 79, sent him another letter with something in it, something holy in it. He said, send back this holy oil with $101. Like that was just going on. And so you'll be blessed if you donate. And if you don't, I can't say what'll happen to you. I have no idea. And if you have and then this is where it gets bad. You take out your credit card, even if you're broke, and donate 1,000, because that seed will make you rich. And so people, yeah, sometimes go broke in giving donations like that. That's the prosperity gospel. Have you seen it, Sydney? Sydney doesn't have a yacht, so I guess it didn't work for her. Something's wrong, Sydney. Maybe you're not doing it right. Try harder, maybe. Yeah. The prosperity gospel works. It works for everybody. I mean, it doesn't work. It definitely works for the preacher because he gets all the money. Works for him for sure. Kaurangi says, one senior devotee once said a simple thing, but I still remember. They are laughing at us at Harinams and so on. But if you think about it deeply, you see grown men singing in the streets with bed sheets. So do you really think they have nothing else to do? And what is it all about? All these books, early morning programs, they should think about it. And if one of them have common sense and they see there are something more than these external things. Yeah, well, it's true because a lot of people became devotees when they saw devotees. And they thought, oh yeah, these people are happier than anybody and they're not working. You know, I just heard a lecture yesterday and Prabhupada was saying, Krishna is feeding everyone and you have no faith, he'll feed you. You're working so hard because you fear. It's out of fear you're working so hard that he won't take care of you. He's taking care of everybody. And Prabhupada said, this is a fact. You don't have to worry. Just on and on. You don't have to worry. He'll take care of you. Medicine music. Can it help us be more Krishna conscious? Talk about nature. I don't know about medicine music. It's an indigenous Indian type thing. It might help. And there may be a lot of things that help, but we have the Maha Mantra also. So we have our own process. So generally, we look for help within our own system and our own culture. If we have to go outside, we have to. It depends. I can't speak about medicine music, but I've never done it. I don't know exactly what it is. But, you know, generally we recommend keep things within the process of bhakti. But if it could actually help you, that's another thing that you would have to see. Depends what's in the medicine also, Talia. If it's psychedelics, then we can't really recommend it. Grongi says, same about the Mormon church. It's so messed up. Even some cosmology doesn't sound so weird for me. Yeah, their beliefs are hard. Salah. It's called Salah. Salah. Ritual prayer, obligatory for Muslims. Yeah. What is your opinion on Rita Maharaj's writing? Marbart says that in his opinion, Draupadi pastime of being disrobed didn't happen. I have no opinion. If I have opinion, I get myself in trouble. He says they pulled out her hair, they didn't disrobe her. That it would be a whole other discussion, which I am not equipped to engage in at this moment. I've heard him talk about it, and I also found it interesting, seeing that we have so many pictures of her being disrobed. But Mathura, can you find a quotation where Prabhupada said she was disrobed? Or a verse? Because maybe what he's saying is that I think he might have said Prabhupada said it, but it's not actually there in Mahabharata, maybe. That's a whole other discussion. Hare Krishna. I already have enough people that don't like me. If I talk about this, then. You know, you say one wrong thing. I'm not even a talk show host. Would speak if I was. Wow, it'd be quite controversial. Okay, we have an ad, Gaur Priya, for this week's workshop. Would you like to know a little bit about it? I'll put it this way. When you're looking for a partner, you have no idea what you're doing. You have no idea what to look for. You have no idea how it's going to turn out. You have no idea what it means to be married. Basically, you have no clue. And so we're going to clue you in. And all of those who are already married can sit there and cry and say, I wish I would have known this before. Or you could celebrate and say, yeah, my spouse, he checks all the boxes. I picked the right one somehow or other. In my wife's words, we didn't know anything when we met one another. We just got lucky. Sometimes it's like that, you know, karmic. You say, what, Prabhu, is karma? You know, what do we have to check so many boxes? It's just karma. For men to suffer, we'll find the worst spouse in the universe. For men to enjoy, we'll find the best spouse. Yeah, that's true. If you're meant to be rich, you will be. So, you know, no need to work. If you're meant to be healthy, you will be. No need to eat right and exercise. If you're, you know, so that's a little too philosophical. You have to be practical. Chaitanya Dasi says, unfortunately, the world is so messed up that whatever a woman does with her body, there will be some man who will find it attractive. Yeah, that's, you know. Now, I hate to be blunt, but I'm going to be. And I think women know this. You're not always the easiest people to live with. Do you know that? I mean, you put a bunch of you together, you don't even like it, right? So, no offense to any of you. You're all sweet and lovely, but sometimes you get weird, you know, right? And some of you, it's more than sometimes. So, if there was no like attraction, why would a guy want to marry you? Like, I mean, you know, really, you know. So Krishna has to create this like amazing attraction. So the guy doesn't notice everything else that he notices after he gets married and says, oh my God, what did I get myself into? I never read that anywhere. That's just the way I see it, you know. But also Prabhupada said that we come into the world, you know, with sex desire. So we want to enjoy, and you can't enjoy something that's not attractive to you. So Krishna makes the women very attractive to men. And so then the men will put up with whatever they have to put up and take care of them. And so the whole system can work. But if you guys were just, you know, weren't attractive to men, then why would they want to be with you? You'd all be widows, right? So he makes you very attractive to men. You know that joke I've told like 100 times when the man says to God, why did you make women so attractive? It's like, it's not fair. At the same time, you made them so stupid. And God said, so they'd be dumb enough to marry you. So that we get back, you know, 50-50 here. So guys, you're all dumb. You should have never gotten married. You're so dumb and so weak. And it's just attracted to the. So anyway, even if the women weren't so physically attractive, some of you are thinking, no, the men still would get married because they want that female energy. Yeah, that's true. But the other reason Krishna created the women and men for women attractive is so that they have something to transcend, to renounce, like a barometer. Here's your barometer of your renunciation. You know, because this is like, let's take everything in the material world that's attractive, let's put it in one place. And that makes it easy for you to like just know how transcendental you are. Because you can just look at the opposite sex and your reaction will tell you. So that includes everything else you're attracted to. It's all just mixed down into this. So if you can deal with this, then pretty much everything else is downhill from there. Does that make sense? It's kind of, you know, I don't know. Did I say it in the right way? Is there another way to say that? That's kind of like, you know, Well, okay, I'll say it another way. Krishna is saying, this is what you came for. And this is why you're here. And this is why you'll stay here. And if you want to get out of here, this is what you have to give up. So it's like, okay, that's pretty simple. And you say, but Krishna, you made it so attractive. Yeah, I made it attractive because you wanted it. You want to enjoy it. Am I not going to make it attractive? What am I going to make it taste bad? And then you'll be frustrated. Why did you make women beautiful? They're all ugly. I came here to enjoy beautiful women. You made them all ugly. And then you become a devotee and you say, why'd you make them all beautiful? Why didn't you make them ugly? If they're all ugly, I would be a sannyasi now. So, you'll never be happy, right? But Krishna made them beautiful because that's what you wanted. And Krishna made the men beautiful for the women because that's what they wanted. And now you become a devotee. You're like, oh, damn, this is so difficult. But then you say, no, but this is what I have to transcend. This is what I have to overcome. So it's good. Is that okay, Mathura? Did I say it in the right way? Or you want to add something to it? Mathura's got a lot of realization about women. Not all women are bad. We like them. They're beautiful. They have soft hearts, a service mood. They're very sensitive. They like beautiful things. They keep the house clean, right?
They are meant to teach us a lot of lessons.
Oh, yeah. They help you see all your faults. Did you see that joke? There's this joke, this cartoon. Should I show it to you? No, anyway. So there's this guy looking very depressed. He's like, 70, 80 years old. He's looking really depressed. And he says to his wife, for the last 30 years, all you ever do is criticize me. She goes, it's 31 years. So it's just like, can't stop criticizing. Hare Krishna. Anna Maria says, especially in ISKCON, men are obsessed with sex and have distorted views. Yeah, you know why they're obsessed with sex? I'll tell you why. Christians have support groups and priests who help them with celibacy and are very serious. Yeah, that's good to know. You know why men in ISKCON are obsessed with sex? Who would like to guess? I could, if I could find a rubber band, I could demonstrate it without having to say it, but I don't know if I have one. Let's imagine this is a rubber band. I'm pulling it, pulling it, pulling it, pulling it, pulling it, pulling it. And what happens if I pull it too far? Either I let it go and it shoots the other way or it breaks, which is kind of the same thing. So, Anna Maria, you have to be compassionate upon these poor men who are raised in this very promiscuous culture, which is now with the world of digital pornography. It's kind of difficult to be celibate. So they're trying, but it's not always easy. And so when you give up something, the thing you give up tends to become more attractive. Have you noticed that? If I say, Chaitanya Dasi, don't eat any potatoes tomorrow, all day tomorrow, she'll be thinking about his potatoes. I can't eat potatoes. Oh my God, how am I going to live? I can't eat potatoes. I don't know, to kill myself. And then I say, Chaitanya Dasi, when was the last time you ate potatoes? She said, I never eat potatoes. But as soon as you say you can't, then that's when you want to. Right? That's just the way the mind works. If you deprive it of something, it wants it, even though it doesn't, even though you weren't even doing it. As soon as you say, you can't have this, you start, oh my God, I can't have it. It's just the psychology. So celibacy, you can't have it. That makes it more attractive. It's just so it's difficult. Yeah. So not all men are that bad, but that's the challenge they have. So all you women, You need to be compassionate upon these men. You're all so beautiful and so attractive. And they're all celibate. And, it's like a difficult combination. So you have to be mothers. You have to act like mothers, dress like mothers, behave yourself like mothers. So when they come into your presence, they just feel completely pure. No sexual stimulation at all. They don't get any sexual vibe from you. That will help them. Because if you give them a sexual vibe, they're already like, they're always ready to vibe. But if there's nothing to vibe with, then they just calm down. Right, Matura? Well, he might say, not always, but in general. That's the idea in general. It's like, you want to eat something, and I go, there's ants inside that sweet ball. And you go, really? Yeah, okay. Even though it's my favorite ladu, I'm not going to eat it. There's ants inside. So it's something like if a woman is there's no sexual vibe coming from her, and by the way she looks, talks, walks, dresses, and so on, that's very good for the men.
Helps a lot. It helps a lot.
Yeah.
But I was going to say the way a lot of women are dressing, and also especially if you go to the beach or somewhere to swim, they barely have a bathing suit on.
Yeah.
Their
Right.
bathing suit goes up their butt, and you can see their whole backside, and it's
crazy, right?
It's like intoxicating for a man.
Don't go to the beach.
Yeah, I was working at the beach the other day, and I came back disturbed.
Yeah, of course. In any traditional civilized society, that wouldn't go on. Of course, the women will say, what's your problem? Just control yourself. So, that's okay. You can say that, but, if you were a man, you would never say that to yourself. I can guarantee you. Okay. Why would we assume if a man wants to live with a man, it's for sex? That was the assumption that Prabhupada made. And homosexuality was kind of in the closet in his culture. So that's the assumption that I'm making, that was his assumption. Because it was not something that he was exposed to. And I think from his perspective, that's basically what it seemed like. And in many cases, that's what it is. But as you say, not always. Active Note says, there's a lot more choices in life than most people think. We have to make an effort to promote goodness. We have 4 more messages, and it's time to chant japa. It's hot topic, huh? Whenever I think my wife is being weird, I give thanks she puts up with my weirdness. What to speak of our kids putting up with both of our weirdness. That's like that one. I have learned, Hari Bhakti, in the USA, schools are teaching kids about option of being gay. Parents are protesting it. This resulting in more gay people. This might not be accurate. No, it's true. Yeah, some people are, by nature they're gay, and some people aren't, but they want to experiment with it, so then you get that's what's going on. That's what's becoming problematic. You're like not gay, but you're like, well, Samira, maybe you are gay and you just don't know it. I think you should, investigate, that's, and she's like 7 years old, and that's what she's learning in school. Whoa. Hare Krishna. Yeah. Welcome to Kali Yuga. Things are just starting to churn. I feel sorry for all of those of you who are young, and happy for all of those of you who are old. You won't have to see the mess. You won't have to see a world overrun by robots. Oh, maybe the robots will have more moral principles. I don't know. Okay, it's time for japa. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.